My grandmother had this pink rose bush that she treasured. It was just a singular rose bush that happened to have grown next to the house. We could do anything, but do not touch her rose bush. But if it was summer, she would cut all the blooms off. And she said that you have to cut the roses off in order for it to continue to bloom. Sometimes in life, what we need to do is actually intentionally prune in order to grow. And what it requires is us to have some necessary endings. We think that endings might be certainly bad or negative, but sometimes endings will produce a powerful beginning. What one thing do you need to intentionally end in order to create that vision more easily? What are you holding on to? What are you tolerating because you're afraid of something that's going to happen by having that intentional pruning? If you don't give up the good, you can never go for the great. If you don't sacrifice now for what you really want, what you want will eventually become the sacrifice. When we are focused and we are all in on something and we remove the heavy stuff that we've been carrying around, we are able to show up more powerfully for what is. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the show. I am so glad that you tuned in with me today, and we are going to continue our solo series of entrepreneurial topics for any business owner that, regardless where you are, if you're looking to grow, if you're looking to scale, if you're looking to exit, these are things that really apply to all of us in every stage. And so today's topic is going to be about leadership. And as I was prepping for this episode and what I wanted to cover, I was reminded of a story from my childhood. And you may not understand how this ties in, but if you stick with me, I promise that it does. You know, most of you may or may not know, I grew up super poor, and my dad actually grew up even more poor, if that's a thing. You know, he was one of 13 kids. There were 8 boys and 5 girls, and 8 boys, all of them shared one bedroom, and all of the girls shared a bedroom, and there was only one bathroom in the whole house. So 13 kids, parents all had to share this one bathroom that didn't have public water, didn't have public sewage. So, you know, just imagine, still used a coal furnace. My mom would never let me take my socks off because my feet would always get black. And, you know, so you have the picture. It was a very different type of upbringing and childhood. And it's obviously not something I talk about. But when I was reviewing this topic, for some reason, I thought of going to my grandparents' house. And, you know, my grandma did not have a lot. This is my dad's mom. She didn't even have a driver's license. My grandfather worked really hard, really, really hard. He was a garbage man. He went and picked up and collected garbage and tried to do the best he could with 13 kids to take care of. And although I'm an only child, I had a bunch of cousins. I was the only girl, and I was the youngest. So just imagine the dynamic, right? And I remember running around and playing outside in the dirt, and, you know, there was all these junk cars sitting around. And, you know, my grandmother had this pink rose bush that she treasured. And so just imagine, you know, kind of dilapidated porch and home and no running water and a dirt driveway and this pink rose bush in front of the house. And this wasn't like part of some beautiful garden. It was just a singular rose bush that happened to have grown next to the house. And I remember how much she valued that. And they never cared what we did. When my grandparents would go to the food bank and they would come back, my cousins and I would open the boxes and have the, you know, spaghetti sauce and the bread and the cheese wheel with the black and white generic labels on everything. And we would make pizza bread and turn the oven up to 600 degrees because we thought that if we turned it up higher, it would bake it faster, but it would just burn it. And so she never cared about any of that. We could do anything, but do not touch her rose bush. It was something that she really valued. And so in this vision of all of this mess, you have this one beautiful bush. But if it was summer, the one thing I could never figure out is, as much as she valued that bush, that at one point during the year, she would cut all the blooms off. And I remember saying, "Grandma, what happened to your rose bush?" And she said that you have to cut the roses off in order for it to continue to bloom. And as I was thinking about this, and I read a book recently that talked about, you know, sometimes in life, What we need to do is actually intentionally prune in order to grow. You have to intentionally prune in order to grow. So think about intentionally cutting down the blossoms in order for that rose bush to survive. And isn't that kind of like life and like business? So often in business, entrepreneurs have this shiny object syndrome where you have so many thoughts and so many ideas and so many things that you want to create, but the stem, the tree, the root system of what you're trying to do, the company may not be able to support all of those additional blooms. And there's something that I learned from Dr. Henry Cloud a very long time ago. He talks about an analogy of a rose bush or a plant of some sort in his book, which I highly recommend, about how we have to intentionally prune our life and our business. And what it requires is us to have some necessary endings. You know, for some reason as humans, we think that endings might be certainly bad or negative, but sometimes endings will produce a powerful beginning. And often in business, we talk about reducing expenses, reducing costs. But in order to, we talk about increasing revenue, reducing expenses. But if you continually cut costs without intention, you may actually defer what you're really looking to create. If we want to build a bigger business and we want to scale, we might have to first start by just cutting expenses 10%. If we cut the wrong place, if we cut the wrong part of the bush, we may actually kill it. So pruning or eliminating things so that you can expand has to be done with intention. You know, Jack Welch, the CEO of GE, basically revolutionized the company as it looks today. And he intentionally pruned. He took a look at all of the good things that the company did, was able to look at all the bad things that the company was doing, and really understood that sometimes in order to grow the company or grow your life, that you need to have these intentional endings. Oftentimes I find entrepreneurs, including myself at one point, that we don't want to have those difficult conversations or difficult decisions because we view this ending that might be bad or negative or have some detrimental result in our life, or perhaps you think it's going to affect the person that you're ending it with. However, we can actually be propelling that person on our team or that person in our life or our business forward by intentionally cutting the stem off of the plant. You cannot have a healthy rosebush or a healthy organization moving forward with things that are bad, average, or dead, or things that you've ignored. And so I want to talk about intentional endings, but also how to transition and have powerful beginnings. In a world where I feel everyone is saying yes, yes, yes to all of these new things and all of these new tactics and learning every single aspect of business, there is an art to saying no. There is an art to pruning. So my question for you to ponder is, when you think of that, is there something that immediately popped up like a gut instinct that you thought about as we were talking about intentional pruning and eliminating to expand? Because I promise you, if there's something that popped into your mind just a few moments ago or right now, it's the one thing that you're avoiding. And I can tell you, over 25 years in business and just in all of the things I've done in my life, I can tell you the things that you're avoiding the most are what's going to propel you forward the fastest. There is an art in saying no, and there are massive opportunities in powerful new beginnings. And the easiest way to see what you need to prune and really start is to define what it is that you really want. What do you want your rose bush to look like? We all have different businesses and we all have different life goals. Some people operate a business just so that they don't have to punch a clock and work 9 to 5. Some people want to build something that they can exit and create generational wealth. Some people want to build a business just to make money. They can pull money out, profit, and invest it in other assets. Whatever you want your life to look like, there's no right or wrong answer. But if we don't first define what we want our rose bush to look like, we don't know what to prune. And we certainly have no vision of what it is that we want to grow. So what do you want your business to actually be? And then take a really hard look. What one thing do you need to intentionally end in order to create that vision more easily? So often we are okay with average. We're okay with mediocrity. We're okay with subpar employees or staff. We're okay with customers that suck the living life out of us because we think that for some reason we need to tolerate it to save what is. But what you're doing is you're giving up what can be, what can become, because we don't realize that we just think it's easier to go with the flow than to decide what it is that you really want for your business and life. But as someone who woke up one day, a decade into my business, about 15 years in, realizing that I had built a business that I didn't want to show up for anymore, that I hadn't taken a week's vacation for 15 years, I was ignoring all of the things I needed to intentionally prove. Maybe it was hiring someone out of desperation and not out of intention. Maybe it was keeping someone for too long because I wasn't brave enough to just let them go. I didn't have the courage or think that I needed some permission in order to build what I really wanted. And once I realized that the art was saying no, that you can only truly eliminate when you expand, that is when everything exponentially took off. What we are keeping and what we are tolerating is actually the same very thing that is preventing us from doing something greater in our life. So my question is for you, what are you holding on to that's just good? What are you holding on to that's comfortable? What are you tolerating because you're afraid of something that's going to happen by having that intentional pruning? And I know it's scary. I know there's fear. I know there's anxiety and anxiousness around it. But if you don't give up the good, you can never go for the great. And I promise you one thing. If you don't sacrifice now for what you really want, what you want will eventually become the sacrifice. And as entrepreneurs, as investors, we have so many things going on, and that distracted focus can actually dilute the results that we're going after. And when you have all these things to manage, if you don't first cut what is not fully serving you or what is just good, you can't go for what's next. You can't go for what's great because you don't have the white space in order to do it. So answer these questions, and we can relate this to business now, but you can put it in every aspect of your life. What is good in your business? What is good, but maybe it's not lighting you up? What is good, but there's something that's just not lining up that is great? What is good, but is draining the life out of you? If it's on a scale and it's a 3, a 4, a 5, I'm sorry, but that is not good enough. What could your business look like if you just went after everything that was excellent? So I want you to take a moment and think, dream, wander, ponder again. What would that look like? What would your business look like if you were able to intentionally prune all of these things that are not great and go after something that's more excellent? And we all have things that are dying, maybe not even quite dead, but if we take the time and focus to revive them, whether it's putting in additional resources or more focus or new team members, that can set you back even further. So what is dead in your business? In order to make a bigger, more powerful, more profitable Rosebush, you get the analogy, right? We have to get rid of what's dying, what's dead, and what might just be good. And what would happen if you took 30 days and to just focus on intentional pruning 1 to 3 things out of your business? And what do you think that by removing those few things would give you in life, in time, in order to do something greater? Because when we are focused and we are all in on something and we remove the heavy stuff that we've been carrying around, we are able to show up more powerfully for what is. It's like my computer right now. My computer barely has enough space. I keep getting the notice, disk is full. It's literally like a visual of my life. This gets full. Things get so full. And then what do we have to do? We have to clean it up. We have to delete it. We have to throw it in the trash. What if we did that in our business, in our life intentionally? The same thing that we do with the computer because we don't want to get a new one. What if we did that in our life so that we don't allow our plates to get so full and filled with so much stuff that we don't have any space to allow what we really want? I use the analogy. It's like we have all of these little tiny golf balls in our hands. Imagine taking an entire dozen dozen of golf balls and trying to hold on to them in your hands. Your hands will be so full and those golf balls will be pushed together so tight. And when your hands are so full, you can't grab the basketball that life or that God is trying to send your way. You have to clear out your hands. You have to eliminate those small, tiny golf balls in order to catch the big basketball that's coming. And often in business, I see entrepreneurs just because they've always done something or they've always had something or they've always had someone in their business, they think that they need to continue with that same duty or that same task. But what you find yourself is just years down the road, holding more golf balls, missing those basketballs that are coming your way. So what can you do right now? What golf balls can you drop? What golf balls have you been holding on to for far too long that you can create some space to go after something greater? Is it a line of revenue? Is it a person in your organization? Is it a client? Once you do intentional pruning and you have that necessary ending, if someone is unhappy and irate, well, it actually tells you a lot about that person. And it gives you more discernment on who to hire or who to work with next. And since we don't know what we don't know, it may actually be that you're also giving this person or this client the opportunity to work with someone else that is a far better fit. Maybe you just gave them permission to trim their rosebush and to create the one of their dreams. So although endings are perceived as a bad thing, they can actually be very valuable and very good for both people involved and the company. So give yourself permission, whether it's saying no to a product or no to a client or no to a training that you don't need, no to a dinner invitation, no to a friendship. You don't have to justify or reason your why. You can be kind, say no, and give someone else the space to do what it is that they need to do to build their best rosebush. I oftentimes think that we are crippled by making decisions because we think we have to justify our decisions with a reason. Although instinctively, sometimes we just know. We just instinctively know that it's not a fit. And I just want to encourage you to go with that instinct because there isn't a reason needed. You just have to be brave enough to take that next step. Because I promise you one thing, if you would have told the 19-year-old version of me what my life was going to look like now, I would have never been able to believe it because I couldn't grasp what this life looks like. It's better, bolder, and bigger than literally I think I could have possibly processed in my 19-year-old brain. So by taking the step and doing the work, getting there, you don't always have to know the next step. You don't have to know what's next after you intentionally prune this thing or have this necessary ending. But what it does is it gives you space to go after that much bigger thing that has been in your soul and you've been ignoring it. And if you have a lot of clients, and if you've never done this exercise before, this could be something that changes the trajectory of your business, your profitability, your happiness, your joy, is to take a look at all of the customers that you're working with, whether it's a CRM or whatever you work with, as far as try to figure out what customers on that list, sorting them, if you're working with them or your team's working with someone directly, what are the bottom 20%? What 20% sucks the living life out of you? What 20% do you dread when you get an email from or you have to interact with? And what does that 20% look like in gross revenue? What do they bring in gross revenue? What do they bring in profitability? And how can you allow that 20% to go work with another business or another company and replace that revenue with the people that you do enjoy working with, that light you up, that are your favorite people to connect with? By holding on to that bottom 20%, you're actually keeping yourself, your business, from working with better customers that you enjoy. These are the types of questions, the little shifts that help you go from these necessary endings to have powerful beginnings. And on the flip side, when you identify that 20% that you want to let go of, think about your top 20%. What are those clients like? Where did you find them? What makes them be so great to work with? And then how can you go find more of them? Now, let's say you identified in your 20%, let's say just for round numbers, you identified 10 people that are like, okay, these people represent this amount of revenue, but it sucks the living life out of my team and us. How can I go get more people like that 20%? There's an interesting stat, and obviously these change every year, but this is what it is right now. In 2023, on average, 20% of emails are opened. 20%. That means 80% of them aren't even opened. So everybody on your list, if you had a 20% open rate, in most cases, that's a really good open rate. On the contrary, over 80% of all DMs are opened. 80%. And most people, not all, but most people do answer their own DMs, or they don't have someone that has access to their social media. So 80% of all DMs are opened, and about 75% of those people open them themselves. Imagine that. And then while we're working with stats, almost 95% of texts are open. So here's how easy this is. If you want to replace the 10 people that suck the living life out of you, and you want to go replace them with 10 other people that are more aligned with what you do and you get lit up to work with, just use the stats in your favor. Who are the 10 people in your target audience? Take 30 minutes every day. That's 3 minutes for 10 people, and reach out to 10 people that are in your target audience. Don't ask for a sell, because that's trying to benefit you. Make it a win-win. Reach out to 10 people every single day. Start relationships with the people that you want to work with. 10 people every single day. If you do that in DMs and 80% of the people open them and 75% of those people open them themselves, imagine what that can do in your business. Even if you just had a 10% conversion rate, that's 250 new clients. A 5% conversion rate is 125 new clients. And if you failed miserably, at least 2,500 people now know who you are. So when they may be in the market for your products and services in the future, they might remember the DM that you sent them. Take that times your lifetime customer value, and this one thing can change the trajectory of your business. But you don't have time to do any of this if you don't intentionally prune, if you don't drop all of the little golf balls that you're holding on to every day. Now, of course, you can automate this. There are different ways that you can do this yourself. You don't have to get stuck in the fact that I just told you to do this for 30 minutes, but I guarantee you that there is 30 minutes a day that you are doing unproductive, non-important, non-urgent tasks, that if you just drop that and you replace this in your day and you tell me in 6 months what your results are, I guarantee you that your business will grow and your sales will increase. So to wrap up today, what do you need to intentionally prune? What endings need to be necessary in order for you to have a new powerful beginning? And will you commit 30 minutes a day to bringing in more consistent revenue into your business in order to replace anything that which you prune? That's all for today's episode, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you like this episode, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to the show. And as you may or may not know, we now have a show on YouTube where you can watch most of these episodes. And of course, if you found value in it, I'd love it if you would share and tag me on social at Candy Valentino so that I can say hello. Thanks again for tuning in to this episode. We'll see you next time.